I'm reminded of the deeply touching letters, cards, and messages which so many of you...
I'm 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except the Queen being there.
The Queen for a very long time. And although you kind of know that this might happen, you don't really think about it very much.
It didn't happen with fanfare. There was no grand abdication, no curtain drawn back in Westminster Abbey. Instead, it began with a whisper. Behind the polished smiles and waving hands of Britain's royal family, something far more seismic was unfolding. Queen Camilla, once crowned in full regalia beside King Charles, now walks palace halls like a guest, stripped of influence, avoided by courtiers, and quietly erased from the inner circle of power. The crown still rests on Charles's head, and Camilla still appears at his side, but the authority they once held has vanished. In a move as discreet as it is devastating, King Charles has transferred real power not to Parliament nor to tradition, but to his son and daughter-in-law. Prince William and Princess Catherine have not been crowned, but they are already ruling. And Camilla? She never saw it coming. This isn't just a story about a queen losing her place. It's about a monarchy undergoing the most silent, stunning transformation in modern history. One that has quietly dethroned a queen without ever saying a word. To the outside world, nothing seemed amiss. Queen Camilla stood poised beside King Charles at state dinners, smiled dutifully from the Buckingham Palace balcony, and continued her patronages with the grace of a seasoned royal. Photographs showed a monarchy in motion, elegant, enduring, and unified. But behind the velvet curtains, a quiet dismantling had begun. The first clues were so subtle they barely registered. Camilla's calendar lightened, long-standing staff were reassigned without explanation, and Charles began missing engagements with increasing frequency. Those closest to the monarchy noticed the shift first: aides who no longer briefed Camilla, advisors who now reported elsewhere, whispers in the corridors that something fundamental was changing. Yet the public image held firm, meticulously managed and seemingly untouchable. For decades, Camilla had fought for legitimacy, for a place beside Charles that wasn't shrouded in scandal or shame, and for a time she believed she'd found it. But in the world of royalty, appearances are armor, and sometimes they're camouflage for collapse.
King Charles had once promised to serve as long as duty demanded, a monarch shaped by decades of waiting, tradition, and compromise. But time and perception are cruel monarchs of their own. As Charles took the throne, he quickly realized that titles don't guarantee affection. Polls revealed a disheartening truth. The British public, especially the younger generation, didn't see him as a symbol of hope. They saw a relic. In contrast, William and Catherine had become the monarchy's living heartbeat, elegant, modern, and deeply admired. The tipping point came quietly. During a critical Commonwealth conference earlier this year, Charles, exhausted and struggling behind the scenes, was forced to cancel appearances. Catherine, at the 11th hour, stepped in. She captivated the room. Diplomats didn't just listen, they leaned in. One foreign official would later confide, "It felt like she was already queen." That moment shook Charles. He didn't face a health crisis, he faced a relevance crisis. And in the privacy of Clarence House, he began asking a question that no monarch before him had dared. Could a king remain king while letting someone else quietly lead? Camilla's road to royalty wasn't paved in gold, it was clawed from shadows. For decades, she lived under the weight of scandal. Branded as the other woman in a story the world had already written, she endured boos from the crowd, venom from the press, and whispers in every hallway that she would never be more than a footnote in Diana's tragedy. But she didn't flinch. She smiled, she waited, and she stayed. When Charles finally ascended, Camilla rose with him, not just as his wife, but as queen consort. To her, it wasn't just a title, it was redemption. She dove into royal duties with vigor, reshaped parts of the household, and insisted, in subtle, determined ways, that she be addressed not as consort, but simply as queen. This was her moment. She believed she had earned it. Every pearl in the crown, every curtsy in her direction, every speech delivered beneath gilded ceilings, it all felt like validation. But power in the monarchy is fragile. It isn't owned, it's permitted. And as Camilla would soon discover, even a crown can slip through your fingers if the kingdom never truly wanted you to wear it. At first, it looked like simple oversight. A missed briefing packet here, an invitation rerouted there. Camilla chalked it up to miscommunication, perhaps a clerical error. But soon, the omissions became patterns. Events she once hosted now belonged to Catherine. Courtiers who once reported to her now bowed to another. Dignitaries stopped requesting her presence. Instead, they asked for the Princess of Wales. Behind the palace's smiling facade, the Queen Consort's influence was being chipped away, one silent blow at a time. Camilla, ever proud, continued her duties with a straight spine and a gracious smile, but she felt it, the unease, the uncertainty, the weight of being tolerated rather than trusted. Her voice in meetings was met with polite nods, not action. Her name began to vanish from the guest lists she once commanded. Even her closest allies began requesting reassignment to Kensington, where real decisions were now being made. Camilla still held the title, still wore the crown, but the power was gone. Not seized, but evaporated. And in the quiet corridors of the palace, she came to understand the most devastating truth of all. She was queen in name only. No trumpet sounded, no royal decree was read aloud. Yet within the walls of Clarence House, a pen had signed away a throne, not through abdication, but through cunning precision. Charles didn't need Parliament's blessing to change the course of monarchy. He only needed authority, discretion, and the will to act. With one private instruction, the king appointed Prince William and Princess Catherine as formal regents, empowered to act on his behalf in every royal matter. This wasn't symbolic, it was structural. Overnight, key documents once approved by Charles began appearing on William's desk. Military briefings, budget decisions, and internal communications were rerouted. Staff called it the Cambridge Directive, a quiet protocol shift that placed the real power squarely in Kensington Palace. Charles kept his crown, Camilla kept her title, but behind the ceremonial front, the monarchy had a new engine. Young, admired, and unburdened by the past. It was regency in disguise, not because of illness or incapacity, but because the future could no longer wait. And Camilla? She wasn't even told. While Charles and Camilla faded quietly into the background, William and Kate stepped forward, not with the proclamation, but with presence. Catherine began leading family initiatives once helmed by the Queen. She met with heads of state, chaired forums, and became a fixture at diplomatic summits, where foreign leaders instinctively turned to her for guidance. William, meanwhile, took the reins on military affairs, domestic charities, and royal advisory sessions, tasks traditionally reserved for the king himself. Inside the palace, senior staff began reporting directly to Kensington. State visit briefings were duplicated, one for Charles, the other, more thorough, for William and Catherine. Even embassies caught on, quietly prioritizing meetings with the younger royals. And the public? They didn't question it, they welcomed it. Polls surged, crowds swelled, social media flooded with praise. Without ever being crowned, William and Catherine had become the monarchy's face, voice, and heartbeat. Not heirs in waiting, but leaders already reigning. They didn't demand power, they simply stepped into the void where Camilla's shadow once lingered and lit it with grace the public couldn't ignore.
Long before Kate wore a tiara or curtsied as Her Royal Highness, another woman redefined royalty for a generation. Diana Spencer, the people's princess, wasn't just adored, she was revered. Even after her tragic death, her presence never left the palace. It lingered in photographs, in public grief, in every uneasy smile Charles offered the cameras. For years, Camilla lived under that shadow, struggling to erase it. But Catherine didn't have to erase Diana. She embodied her. And every hospital visit, every moment of warmth with a child, every glance that felt sincere, the world saw not a copy, but a continuation. Social media lit up with side-by-side images, Diana cradling a newborn, Catherine comforting a mother, Diana smiling at a crowd, Kate doing the same with effortless grace. It wasn't orchestrated. orchestrated. It was natural. The monarchy had tried to bury Diana's legacy, but the people had never let it go. And when Charles handed quiet power to William and Catherine, many saw it not as a handover, but as a homecoming. Diana may never have worn the crown, but in Catherine, her spirit had finally found its throne. It didn't happen all at once. Camilla's fall came in quiet humiliations, a cancelled engagement here, a missing briefing there. At first, she held her composure, brushing off omissions as scheduling errors or staff missteps, but inside, she knew. The palace she helped organize no longer answered to her. Courtiers she had elevated now deferred to Catherine. The power she once clutched had slipped away not with scandal, but with silence. The breaking point came at Balmoral. As Catherine stepped out of her car, the waiting crowd erupted in cheers, flashes, and admiration. Moments later, Camilla emerged, and the crowd fell into eerie quiet. No cheers, no boos, just disinterest. It felt like she was invisible, one onlooker whispered. Inside the palace, Camilla's reaction turned from confusion to fury. When she learned of Charles's signed decree, the private document handing power to William and Catherine, she stormed into his study. "You promised me the crown," she reportedly snapped. Charles didn't argue. He simply said, "It's what the country needs." And just like that, Camilla realized she had not been dethroned with force. She had been replaced gently, thoroughly, and without fanfare. There was no trumpet, no throne room proclamation, no BBC breaking news. Yet the monarchy has changed, not in theory, but in practice. Slowly, then all at once, the machinery of royal power shifted its gears. Couriers now delivered documents to Kensington, not Clarence House. Senior aides who once orchestrated Camilla's calendar now serve on Catherine's expanding team. William chairs royal advisory meetings with authority that no longer feels borrowed. Catherine commands global forums with poise once reserved for a reigning queen. International dignitaries skip Buckingham and instead make discreet visits to the Cambridges. Embassies prepared 2 briefings for state visits, the official one for Charles, the strategic one for William and Catherine. This isn't a ceremonial trial run. It's a structural reset. Charles has remained king in name, but the pulse of the monarchy beats in a different chamber now. What's most remarkable? The public hasn't demanded a formal announcement because they already understand what's happened. William and Catherine haven't just stepped into their future roles, they're living them. And Camilla, she isn't part of that future anymore. She's a remnant of a past that's been quietly rewritten.
Camilla still wears the crown. Her name remains in programs. Her place beside Charles is technically intact, but inside the palace, where real influence lives, she's already a ghost. Staff no longer defer. Courtiers no longer consult. Her voice, once guarded by Charles himself, now echoes unanswered in the halls. What began as a subtle shift has become a full transformation. And the public? They didn't revolt. They didn't protest. They simply moved on. They chose their monarchs, not by law, but by love. In William and Catherine, the people found hope, grace, and return to authenticity. They chant Catherine's name. They line up for hours just to catch her eye. Even skeptics of the crown admit she feels like the royal family's last best chance. In contrast, Camilla's name draws silence, not hatred, not scandal, just absence. And in the world of royalty, irrelevance is the cruelest exile. This wasn't a coup. It wasn't an abdication. It was a correction, a rebalancing of history's scales. Camilla fought for the crown. Catherine was handed it by a grieving nation still clinging to Diana's dream. And now, with every handshake, every cause, every silent nod from Charles, that dream is finally becoming reality. Not because power was seized, but because it was quietly, undeniably earned. In the end, Camilla's reign wasn't ended by scandal or rebellion. It was undone by grace. Not the kind written in law books or royal decrees, but the kind that lives in the hearts of the people. William and Catherine didn't storm the throne. They didn't ask for it. They simply became everything the monarchy needed: beloved, modern, and quietly powerful. And when history turned its page, it did so not with noise,
but with clarity. Camilla once believed she had claimed her crown at last, but royalty isn't confirmed by ceremony. It's validated by love. And now, as Catherine rises, not just in title, but in truth, the world sees what it has long waited for, a queen chosen not by lineage or law, but by legacy. Royal secrets don't always make headlines, but here we bring them to light. Like, comment, and subscribe if you believe the real monarchy lives behind the scenes, and let us know who you think is truly ruling Britain now.